bit off the cuff. I've been in America for 6 days now, and every single person I've spoken to has said they want to come to Australia and they want to go to the outback. And we'd love to have you all, but my tip is don't go to the outback. If you want to go to the outback, go down to Death Valley and think of something drier and worse than that, because that's what the outback is. There's nothing lives there except lizards, basically, and a few snakes, so I wouldn't go to the outback. I've indulged quite a bit in American culture since I've been here, and last night I went to one of your absolute icons, Hooters. And if they start serving food there, it'll be a really good place, I reckon. Well, they do serve food there, I didn't notice that. Anyway. I attempted some gravy and biscuits, and it was a very short attempt. Man, that's not fit for human consumption, guys. That's very ordinary fare, I felt. And I started to think about what is the connection between America and Australia, and there's certainly a connection, and I don't really know what it is, and I've put a lot of thought into it in the last 24 hours, and the way I'm thinking is that probably Australians regard Americans as big brothers, and we regard ourselves as a little brother. And back in World War II we were on our knees, and if it wasn't for Big Brother I would be talking Japanese now. So we always appreciated the Big Brother coming in and kicking ass for us. And since then we got burned during the Second World War by England, and the only friend that we walked out of that conflict with was the Americans. And I think that's probably why since then we've marched in alongside you guys, or in your shadow probably, and I think every armed conflict since then, the Americans and the Australians have sort of stood side by side. So I think it's a big brother, little brother relationship, and that's the way we look at it. Why the Americans have an affection for Australia, I have no idea, but I'm really glad that you do. Some other interesting things I've noticed is that the end of summer and everything here is green, or it certainly was around Kansas City. And at the end of summer, everything is like an old desert boot in Australia. It's very brown and it's dry and there's nothing much alive. And then we get the winter rains and things regenerate a bit. So I was a little bit shocked by the greenness. I was also shocked by drive-in banks. I think that's hilarious. And drive-through liquor shops. And a gas station where you can buy your bottle of Jim Beam there. Your bottle of Jim Beam was $14.95 that I saw the other day, and you can get it on special for about $32 in Australia. So a lot of your stuff is a lot cheaper than us. Having said that, that's probably enough observations in 6 days. I was born 52 years ago, and I grew up in a central Victorian country town called Bendigo. Bendigo was a couple of hours away from the ocean, and until today that's probably the furthest I've ever been away from the ocean. I often wondered if people wanted to categorise the peoples of the earth. If you're an alien and you pop down out of space, if you come to Australia, I feel you would call us the ocean people. 95% of our population live within an hour of the ocean, and we fish and surf and sail and snorkel and scuba dive and everything else, and the ocean is very, very important to us. I went to a wedding at a place called Waikul, and it was about 4.5 hours from the ocean. It was right in the middle of country territory, and while I was waiting to go to the wedding I went through a few of the shops in Waikul, and I went to the Waikul surf shop. 4.5 hours from the nearest salt water, but they still had a surf shop. So that's my country. It has some funny things as well. I grew up in Bendigo, and I had the benefit of a Catholic education beaten into me over many years, and I graduated from Marist Brothers College, and by far my most proficient subject I think was football, Australian rules football. It's a fast, brutal game. We don't wear pads or helmets or anything like that. It's action-packed and it's go, go, go. And at the time it seemed very, very important. At the age of 52, with bung knees and shoulders and fingers that go all directions, it looked to me a bit like a waste of time now. So if I had my time again, I probably wouldn't have played Australian rules football. I left college and then I played professionally around a number of states for about 4 or 5 years. I played football, drank beer and chased girls. Not necessarily in that order, but that was the order in which I was successful. Football, beer and girls was a long way last. I just didn't have that much success with the girls. And then I ended up in a place called Warrnambool, which is on the west coast of Victoria, and it's an ocean town, and it's on Bass Strait, which is called the Shipwreck Coast, and it's called the Shipwreck Coast for very good reason. They've had massive shipwrecks over the years, particularly in the old days. It's a wild, unforgiving coastline, and they get cold, powerful swells off the Great Southern Ocean. And it was in Warrnambool that I fell in love with two things. Firstly, my first wife, and secondly, surfing. And to this day, one of those loves has blossomed. And that's surfing. I played at the upper 24. I was appointed a coach for a local football team, and I didn't realise what sort of position a local football coach held within a community, within a country community anyway. And I thought I was just signing up to coach the football team, but pretty soon I found that I was a big brother or a big sister to the footballers and their families and their friends and their relatives. And on occasions I was a policeman, and on occasions I was a priest, and on occasions I was a father or a mother figure. And it was, it's a job that never really went away. I will still get phone calls from guys I played football with 30 years ago. They'll ring me out of the blue and want to talk about their latest divorce or trouble with the kids or business problems. And looking back, I think that's where I started to try and observe life a little bit deeper than perhaps the average Australian guy. And so that's where I started looking in depth into situations and how to succeed in various situations. At the age of 27, I began doing some property development with a little bit of success. And by 31, I was retired from football, married with 2 kids, owned and operated a hotel. I had 90 acres of coastal land with private beach, owned my own home, had a rental home, a couple of cars, and I had some land on a river about an hour away where I was going to build a holiday house. So I looked like I was doing pretty damn well for myself. And within just over 12 months, I'd lost everything. The whole lot. The hotel turned into like a giant black hole, and I remember at the end of it standing on the doorstep of a house I had to rent because I'd lost everything, and I call them light bulb moments. They're sort of like the cartoons. The light bulb goes on over your head and you go, you just get a clarity of vision. And I remember thinking, I don't have a damn thing. I don't have a wife anymore. I don't have a car. I don't have a blanket. I don't have a bed or a pillow. I don't have a cup to drink out of. I don't have a pot to boil water in. I don't have a TV. I think I had a surfboard, and that was about all I had. And it was a pretty rude awakening. And if you ever visit me in Adelaide and you're unlucky enough to have me make you a cup of coffee, if you ask nicely, I can show you at the back of the cupboards where I keep the coffee mugs. There's a white coffee mug with a little teddy bear on it, which is totally out of place in our house. And every couple of years my wife tries to throw it out, but I won't let her because it has great sentimental value, because on that day when I had nothing, the first thing I bought was a couple of coffee mugs, and that's the only thing that's sort of I've been able to keep. So I am on the bones of my arse. I am feeling like a total loser. I feel as if I'm the object of ridicule in town, little country town. Young upstart footballer, he's come a gutser and he's got nothing. We'll have a bit of a snicker at him, a bit of a laugh at him. And I didn't much like where I was, so I decided I had to get up off my knees and get back into the game of life. And the only thing I had not failed at was real estate. So I turned to real estate. I didn't have any money, so it's pretty hard to play the real estate game when you've got no money. And I had noticed that second-hand building materials were virtually free, even though they were very, very good materials. So I came up with a plan to build a brand new house out of really good second-hand building materials. And it took me about 14 months to collect all the bits and pieces, build a house, and it was fairly successful. And all of a sudden I'm back off my knees and I'm standing up a little bit. I've got a house, I've got a bit of equity in it, so I've got some cash in the property. I'm still feeling pretty lonely and pretty miserable, and I decided I was going to leave town. So I looked at a map and I chose Adelaide, and I was very glad I did. So I rolled up in Adelaide after selling my house with a little bit of cash in my pocket. A long story short, I also had my custody of my 2 kids. So I showed up with a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And I didn't know anyone that lived within 7 hours drive of where I was living. And it was pretty tough days. I was working part-time, trying to raise 2 kids entirely on my own. I would have killed for a grandmother or someone just to give me a little bit of a break, but that wasn't to be. I can recall our refrigerator. I could never pay my bills on time. And when I got my first bill, I wouldn't pay it. And when I got the second request, I wouldn't pay it. And it was only when I got the third and final request, the disconnection notice or the court notice, I would pay that. So I had a fridge covered with red notices, and I paid whichever one was covered up next. And I struggled through life, really just keeping my head above water. It was looking like I was going to leave town. It was looking like I was going to skulk back to my family and my friends and my relatives back in Victoria. And then I had a good bit of luck. A young lady called Karen O'Malley took a bit of a fancy to me, and she contributed to my family in so many ways, and I wouldn't have been where I am now if it wasn't her. So I ended up marrying Karen, and that's my wife now, and she's a pretty cool lady. The other good luck was we stumbled upon a real estate opportunity which to this day I still can't believe, and I talk quite a bit about it in the book. And we had a little bit of backing, but we didn't have very much, and we had to decide whether we were going to go with this real estate opportunity and put it all on the line. And if it succeeded, we were going to do okay, and if we didn't, we were back on the bones of our arse again. So we did the research and we went for it, and it came good, and we did pretty good out of it, and it sort of set us up financially forever. So back off my knees, I'm married to Karen. Things are looking pretty damn good for me. Life's good. It's pretty easy actually, this life business. I think I've got it sussed. I've got it worked out. I'm on top of it. And then on the 6th of July 2006, Karen came home from work, and she was 6 months pregnant, and she wasn't feeling that well, so she had to lay down. And at 8 o'clock that night, I sat down to watch my favourite TV show, My Name is Earl. And we looked at, sometimes you look back at timelines, and there's 10 minutes in this next part of the story that I would change, and it was 10 minutes that could have proved fatal. So about 20 past 8, Karen gets up and she rings the hospital and says she's not feeling well, and they said, well look, you better come up, you're pregnant, we'll just check this out. So Karen comes out and says, come on, let's go to the hospital. And I said, can we wait 10 minutes? I want to watch the end of My Name is Earl. And so we waited till the end of My Name is Earl, and we jumped in the car and drove to the hospital, and it was 20 minutes to get there, find a car park, and we walked in, filled out some forms, introduced ourselves, sat in a waiting room, and then we were shown a room, and all hell broke loose. Karen went into labour, and there was bells and whistles and alarms going off everywhere, and generally in my life, alarms and flashing lights mean bad news. But in this particular time, it was all medical, and we had 9 medical people in the room with us, and they all looked very, very worried, and they were moving in a very sharp fashion. So I guessed that we were in a bit of trouble, and we were. But once again, I had a moment of clarity where these 2 nurses who were in the room looked at me, and they didn't say a word. They just looked at me, and they looked at each other, and they were both thinking the same thing. They were thinking, if this bloke faints, I don't want to be catching him. So they stood me in the corner, so that if I fainted, I was just going to hit the wall and roll down. And then they said, we've got a job for you. And I said, okay, I'm the man for it, I'm up for it. And it was a winter's night, and I'd worn a winter's coat. I said, we want you to stand in the corner and hold the coat. I said, okay, I reckon I can do that. So while all hell was breaking loose, I stood in the corner and held the coat. And I often say to Karen now, if you ever need a coat held in an emergency situation, I'm the man to call, because I've done it before, I have experience, and I did a really good job looking after that coat. So basically they'll just get me the hell out of the way. And while I was out of the way, Karen gave birth to Marnie Finn, and Marnie was 830 grams, which was less than 2 pounds. If we could have that photo now, please. This is Marnie on the first day in her life. Can we turn the lights down? That's my finger, and I think that's a pretty amazing photo. Thank you. Anyone got any tears in their eyes? Usually someone cries, not just me. So we embarked on a hell journey, and every hour of every day was literally a life and death situation. We addressed every conceivable disability that could be the human body can address, and every day was an extra challenge. I saw Marnie die dozens of times, and whenever she died, the alarms would go off, the bells would go, and the nurses would race over to revive her, and I got sick of seeing her die. But after 101 days, we marched out of there. We got out of jail, we got out of hell, and we made it through. And after 101 days, we walked out with a beautiful, happy, healthy, vivacious young daughter. She started school 6 weeks ago, and if she was here now, she would be taking this microphone off me and singing you ABBA songs and dancing. She loves dancing and singing. So very, very lucky to get out of that. So very briefly, that is my life. I've told you things which make me look reasonably good. I think they do. All the things that make me look really bad, I've left out because I'm telling the story. And I'm thinking if I ever get famous, the media will have plenty of skeletons and bodies to dig up on me. But bugger them, they can look them up themselves. I'm not going to give them to them. So that was roughly my life. I have a friend called Tony Lyons, who's a very, very good mate of mine. And if you have one friend like Tony, you are lucky. He will do anything for you. And over the years, we've come to rely on each other pretty solidly, and we often ring each other up for guidance and counsel. And one day, Tony was going through a divorce, and he was going through all the standard stuff you go through in a divorce, and he felt like he was copping a beating and losing. And he said, I just have to do something. I just can't stay here and be beaten like I'm beaten. I have to do something. And he had about 5 options A, B, C, D and E. And he said, what do you think I should do? And we discussed it, and there was no clear answer in my opinion. It was a little bit too early. And if you committed to option A and option C was the right one, he would lose out. If he committed to option C and E was the answer, he would lose out. So I said to him, Tony, you need to do nothing. You need to check out all the different options, work out all the different avenues. You need to sit on the fence like a big vulture and do nothing. Be ready to pounce. But at this stage, just observe. And that was the first time we ever spoke about the vulture. And it grew into a bit of a joke. I'd ring him up and say, look, I've just got a speeding ticket, what would a vulture do? The kids are out late, didn't come home till 2 o'clock, what's the vulture going to do now? And it started out as a joke, and the more we joked about it, the more we grew to admire this pretty big ugly bird. Now, I've had a few of my American friends point out that the local vultures that they see in their backyard is nothing like the noble beast that I portray. And that's fine. My book isn't an ornithological study, it's just using the bird as an analogy to support points I'm trying to make. However, there are over 40 different varieties of vulture in the world, and if you put them all together, you'd probably get a pretty good bird. So that's where the vulture comes from. We admired that it was an ugly, big bird, and we could both relate to that because we were both big, ugly guys. And we admired that it was worshipped in many cultures. We admired that when things are really, really tough, when death and destruction is all around, the vulture is shining at its absolute peak. It will use knowledge that it has to its own advantage. If it sees that animal limping at the back of the herd, it'll just use that knowledge and it will observe. It will observe from different angles and be patient. So there were lots of things we felt that we liked about the vulture. So that's where the vulture sort of come from. Some of the core principles of the book I'll just speak about now. And one of the core principles is success. And some years ago, an American gazillionaire entrepreneur toured Australia and gave talks at all the big cities, and he was charging $200 odd for us to sit out and listen to him. And I thought, well, I want to know what the secret is to success, and I reckon $200 is a pretty good price to pay for that. So I went along, and the room was full of smart suits and sharp haircuts. And when this dude rocked in, they sort of virtually worshipped him. And I looked at this guy, and he was clearly very overweight. He was very red in the face. He was sweating while he was talking. He talked about his early days in business and how many people he had to destroy to get where he was. He talked about stepping on the middleman and the little man. He talked about corporate takeovers where he sent people bankrupt and broke all these other businessmen. He talked about working 70-hour weeks every day of the year, including Christmas Day. He seemed pretty proud of that. Christmas Day I worked. And I thought, Jesus Christ, when does the success start? This guy's got it wrong. He talked about his health issues and his heart attacks. He talked about his multiple failed marriages. He talked about the bitches that cleaned him out every time. He talked about his kids in rehab. And I'm thinking, well, I've been here an hour and I still haven't heard much success here. And he lost me. He totally lost me. And I started looking around the room and I'm thinking, is that bloke over there going to be a success? I don't think so. What about that one over there? And, gee, I don't think there's going to be many people in this room that are successes, including me. I looked out the window, there was a homeless guy pushing his trolley. I thought, nah, he's not going to be a success for sure. There was a bar over the road, there's a couple of young punks hanging out the front of that. I thought they're not going to be successes. So I thought, wow, we're all doomed to failure. All of us. Surely that's not right. So I thought about it some more, and then I come to a point of view that success is an individual decision. Success to you might be raising a wonderful family. It might be operating a successful business. It might be growing a good pumpkin patch. Success might be hitting a golf ball 270 metres straight up the middle of the third fairway. Or it might be hiking. And I thought that makes a lot more sense to me. So, under his version, he was a wealthy failure, in my opinion. He had a lot of money, but he didn't have much else. So I thought, well, under my version, actually every person in the world could be a success, provided you determine what success means to you. So, one of the core principles of the book is that you need to decide what success means to you, what brings you joy, what makes you happy, what brings you fulfilment. And it's a different answer to every different person. It's really important that you are true to yourself and that you're not overly influenced by your husband or your wife or your parents or your government or your church. You need to make the decisions for yourself individually. And when you do make that decision, it doesn't have to be locked in forever. If you want to smack that golf ball 270 yards up the middle of the third fairway and you get to the point where you can do that, you might then decide to focus on music or model aeroplanes or whatever. So, when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a rock star, but I didn't have the hair for it. In my 20s, I wanted to play sport, and in my 30s, I wanted to have a family, and in my 40s, I wanted to sort of financially solidify in my current setup, and in my 50s, I want to get my kids the hell out of my house, and I'm working on that now. Get the hell out of here, you guys. You're grown up. Leave the nest. So that's success. Another key principle of the book is the people in your life. Choosing a partner. 50% of marriages fail. And I'm pretty confident that if I invented a car that only started 50% of the time, no one would buy it. But people keep buying marriage. It's something we must inherently need, I think. I'm not exactly sure why, but we do. It's what humans do. We get married. But unfortunately, we get it wrong half the time. And for anyone in this room that's been through a marriage, and I'm guessing it'll be 50% of you, 50% of us, if you've been through a divorce, you know the physical, the emotional, the financial pain that comes with that. And a lot of people do not recover from it. It's an awful thing to go through. So I think the best thing to do is get it right the first time. And when I was in the market for a partner, I had 4 criteria. And every time I give this talk, my mind goes blank right at this point of time. What the hell are those 4 criteria? And I was getting embarrassed coming up blank every time, so I came up with a mind trick that I use in Kansas City, and I'm going to use it here. And my mind trick is San Francisco, SF. S stands for social and spiritual, and F stands for financial and physical. Now I know physical doesn't start with F, but I've already told you I wasn't that great at school, so give me some slack there. So social, spiritual, financial and physical. Those were the 4 criteria I used to choose my partner, and it's worked so far. I talk about those criteria in depth in the book, but it's not that important. The actual criteria aren't that important. What is important is that you actually have some criteria. Too many people in life wander on through life saying, I hope I meet someone special. Is that it? Special, okay. If you were running a multi-million-dollar company that the rest of your life depended on, and you had to select someone to run that company, I'm damn sure you would have some criteria to select that person on. And I think the most important decision you have in your life is choosing the correct partner. So think long and hard about what sort of criteria you need to use for a partner. Do not lower your standards just because you don't meet those criteria in the first 3 or 6 months. Don't say, oh, well, I won't worry about a sense of humour, I'll go with someone else, you know. Don't take it something less than what you want. Men don't have big boobs as one of the criteria, alright? It's not worth it. You've got to do better than that. So think about personality, a smile, the ability to be a good mother, someone with a good sense of humour, intelligence, whatever. The choice is yours, but it's okay to change them. So if you want a good sense of humour and you finally hook up with a lady comedian or a male comedian and you think, I don't think this sense of humour is all it's cracked up to be, then change it. But have some sort of criteria there. The other people in life are your friends. And you can easily see people who have the wrong friends. You would know some people, you may also be one. I call my friends either assets or liabilities. Actually, that's wrong. I call my friends assets. If they're liabilities, they're not my friends. Assets are people who contribute to your life, people who lift you up, people who make you better for knowing them, people you like seeing, people who are positive, and people who make you a better person. Okay? Liabilities are people who drag you down, who would rather drag you down to their level rather than have you lift them up to yours. Liabilities are people who are negative, who take from you all the time, who never give back. Liabilities need to be considered to be gotten rid of. On 2 occasions I have been to friends and said, I'm sorry, you are no longer my friend, I don't want to see you anymore, I don't want you to come near me, leave me alone. It's a pretty sobering thing to do as a man. You can do it when you're a 5-year-old pretty easy, but as a grown-up man it's pretty sobering. I thought long and hard about it, and on both occasions I ended up just biting the bullet and doing it, and I didn't regret either one. Both times I felt very relieved at the end of it, and both times I slept very well that night. Now, my mum read the book and she took exception to that, and she took a piece of me over it. She said, so as soon as your friend falls over or something, you ditch him. I said, no, it's a long-term point of view. And if you've got long-term friends and they are ill or need help or whatever, no, don't burn them then. I'm just saying that if they are a long-term negative impact on your life, and I'm seeing a lot of people nod here, so I'm thinking people are understanding what I'm saying. If it's a long-term thing, then at least consider whether it's worth keeping them in your life. Because if you choose the right person and have the right sort of friends around you, I believe you are set up for a very, very successful life. The media is not your friend. The media are not there to entertain you. They are not there to inform or educate. Isn't that right, Bill? The media are there to sell you stuff. They are there to take every last dollar out of your pocket. They give you an unreal expectation of what you want. They will convince you want things that you don't want. I know that I want and I deserve to have a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 2-storey mansion overlooking the water, where I live with my 5'10", beautiful blonde wife with straight hair and long tapering legs, and we raise our 2.3 perfect children with straight teeth. And we live a perfect, idyllic life, a privileged life, and nothing ever goes wrong in our life. And we drive our 2.3 perfect children to their private educational facility in one of our BMWs. And after we drop these perfect children off, I go and play around the golf before I go into my marketing firm, my multi-million-dollar marketing firm, where I don't have to actually do any work. I just sit back and rake in all the money. And my wife does a bikini shoot for Sports Illustrated before she goes to her law firm, and she makes a couple of $1 million a year as well. I'm sure that's what I deserve, because that's what I see in the paper and in the magazines all the time. And it really worries me that people don't question these myths and these images that are portrayed to us in the media. I think you need to ask questions. Why are you using that 16-year-old model to sell anti-aging cream? Gee, would that nasal spray really make the fat melt off my backside? Or give me an erection, whichever nostril I use there. You know, the Olympic athlete, do you really use that sugar-coated, fat-soaked breakfast cereal in your training regime? I'm thinking you probably don't, even though you endorse it. So the media need to be questioned, and particularly for our kids, I can pick up any glossy magazine in a newspaper stand or a newsstand, and on the cover will be some overpaid, unhappy loser in Hollywood who's in rehab and miserable, and they're the sort of role models that our kids have been given today, and I feel really sad about that. The people who contribute to our community, who look after the elderly or the disabled, I've never seen them on the front of Who magazine yet, but I think they're the sort of people that should be there. So don't trust the media. They have ulterior motives, and they really just want to take the money out of your pocket. We live in a funny society at the moment where you need a certificate for everything, and you don't need experience for very much at all. In Australia, if I'm living with mummy and daddy who are wealthy, they can buy my way through college pretty easily now, and just 2 weeks ago it became legal for them to purchase a position for me in university. Whether I've passed or not, it don't matter. They pay their $7,500 and I've got a position in university. Not on my hard work and merit, but on my parents' dollars. And once I get to university, they get you tutors who will hold your hand and do most of the work for you. You can Google most of the work and most of the answers on the internet. And without too much effort, I will walk out of that university with a degree in something, and I will be an expert, even though I've never actually left home or lived a life or had a fight or broken up with a girlfriend or had an injury or an illness or anything. I'm an expert. I can tell you how to live your life. And I'm tired of financial advisors who have no money telling me how to invest mine. And I'm really tired of experts who have no kids who tell us how to raise our kids. And I'm tired of gym instructors who are overweight and unfit, and they're going to tell us how to be fit. And we have nutritionists who are the size of a 3-bedroom house, and they're going to tell us how to eat healthily. So I've got a saying that is completely original. I don't know if it's that good, but I made this up. And that is, if you want to learn how to live in the wild, then go and talk to someone who has actually done it, not someone who has studied Robinson Crusoe, because you'll get different answers. Smart people, I believe, learn from their mistakes, and really smart people learn from other people's mistakes. So by all means, ask opinions and seek counsel and seek advice, but just be wary on who you seek advice from. And given a choice, I would take experience over a certificate every time. A friend of mine had a young son who was he wanted to play Australian rules football, and he wanted to play under-8 Australian rules football at school, and they couldn't get anyone to coach the side. So my friend said she will coach his team. Good on you, mum. Good mum. However, the school said to her, before you can coach the under-8 team, you need to have a certificate 1 in sports administration. Now, I would have thought that under-8 football, there'd be one rule, and that is have a bit of fun. Out you go. But mum needed a certificate 1 in sports administration. It wasn't a university degree, it's just one of those little adult college things, you know, that they do 2 nights a week for a couple of weeks and they get a diploma or something. And she went along to this, her first night, and the room was full of mums and dads who had volunteered to coach their kids' basketball, soccer, cricket, football, baseball teams. And there was a guy here called Russell Ebert, and no one here will have ever heard of Russell Ebert, but in our community in South Australia, he is a legend. And I discussed this with the KC mob last Tuesday, and the best I can work out is that the equivalent here would be Buck O'Neill. So there's a guy of the stature of Buck O'Neill in this class, because he had volunteered to coach a local junior team, and some clown had said he had to go and do a Certificate 1 in sports admin before he could do it. And it struck me that the guys who were running the class were not worthy of having Russell Ebert. They were not worthy to carry his shoes, and yet they were there teaching him about sports administration. Something wrong with that. I've probably talked long enough. What I will, I just usually close with a, this is the most difficult part of the evening for me. I have to put this down, put my glasses on. And read a paragraph. The Vulture ideal is not simple, but it's not complicated. It's about being true to yourself and not being sucked into other people's ideas of what you are or who you should be. It is about creating your own personal definition of success and happiness, and then striving for those goals. That's all I've got to say. Thank you so much for coming, and I think we'll have some question and answers if there's any, so thank you. You usually clap now. Has anyone got any questions?
Where's the mama vulture and the baby vultures?
The female vulture is finished. It is completed, and I have. Everyone wants to know about it, and initially I decided whether I'd actually tell the truth, but when in doubt, I always tell the truth. My publisher has said as soon as we get to a certain amount of sales on the first book, the second one will be automatically published. Doesn't matter whether it's any good or not. Once it's business. You sell this amount, we publish it. I've given it out to about 14 women for feedback on, and 2 have given me have come back and said, this is really good. Every woman in America needs to read this. And the other 12 won't talk to me anymore. That's the truth. And just recently, I was told this, I've got a friend who's a psychologist in Adelaide, and she's got a bit of spunk in her. She doesn't care about hurting my feelings. And she said, I'll bloody tell you. I said, okay. So I gave her a copy, and she disappeared. I said, and I sent her an email, Georgina, where are you? Have you read that thing yet? She said, yeah, I'll get back to you. And I thought, she's going the same way as the others. And in the end, I cornered her, and she was very elusive. She didn't want to say much. And I was getting sick of this. So I said, righto, G, what's the go? What do you think of the information in the book? She said, the information is fantastic, great. I said, well, what's the problem? And she said, I don't want to hear it from a man. And she suggested that I publish it under a woman's name, which sort of defeats the purpose of a bit. And I thought about that for about 2.3 seconds, and I said, no, I'm not going to be doing that. So apparently there's nothing wrong with the message, there's just something wrong with the messenger. So look, I actually think it will be out on Kindle, I think. I was just thinking that the other night, because on the plane flight over here, I looked through the passengers, and I calculated that 1 in 5 were reading a Kindle. And there was only a few people reading books. And before I left Adelaide, I wanted to bring a book over to a friend here about Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly is probably a 10 times better version of Jesse James, in my opinion. But that's a totally biased one. He's a folk outlaw in Australia, and I wanted to bring a friend a copy of that, and I drove from home to the nearest big shopping centre, and I know at the shopping centre there were 7 bookstores last Christmas, and now there was 5. So 2 have gone broke in the last 6 months. I thought, that's interesting. 3 of the 5 bookstores were significantly smaller than they were at Christmas time. They were shrinking big time. And I went through each of these bookstores, and because I'm a man, I don't ask for instructions or directions. I just went looking, and I couldn't find a book on Ned Kelly. And in the end, I'd go to the counter, and they'd say, we can order one in. And I thought, oh, I'm not doing that. So I kept looking through 5 bookstores, and then I gave up and I drove home. So that was the best part of 2 hours was wasted. And when I got home, I thought, oh, my friend's got a Kindle. Well, I've never done this before, I'll have a go. So I just put in Kindle. Gee, that's easy. Put in Ned Kelly. Ding, there was 10 books come up. Well, I'll take that one. Ding. Less than $5. Less than $5. Jesus. I thought that would cost $30 to $50 in Australia. And then it said, do you want to email this to someone? I said, hell yeah. So I emailed it. So it took less than 5 minutes, and my friend in Western Missouri had the book sitting in her email for her Kindle. And it just struck me, books are dead. They are so dead. They'll be collectors and stuff, and they're not strictly dead, but they're on their way out. We had a news story in the paper in Adelaide just the other day, and they had this student from 2010, it was one of the high-priced colleges there, who I hate, and she had a great big backpack, and she had a load of all her school books. And they were saying our kids used to get bad backs from carrying these things around. That was 2010. Then they showed the same girl 2011 holding a Kindle, and all her books were on the Kindle. She could carry it in her back pocket almost. How do we get onto Kindles and Ned Kelly? What was the question? The question was the female Vulture Perspective. I think it will be on Kindle in the maybe before Christmas, I think. But we shall see. Was there any other questions? Wow, I must have covered them all. Okay, well look, thanks for... what does that mean, Lee? Alright, I'm signing books if anyone wants any of the books signed. There's books there available if anyone wants them. I'm learning to read sign language in America. In Kansas City, this means slow down and stop sounding so Australian. And that means sign a book. Okay. Is there any other symbols anyone needs? I saw one on the road the other day. I'm not too sure what that means. Okay, look, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast. I really enjoy coming and speaking to my friends here. It's the first time I've had an audience where I think I knew everyone in it, so that's been a real pleasure for me. And we're going to, after the book signings and stuff, we're going to Galloway Station for lunch. And tonight there's a bit of a catch-up at the Clarion, correct?
Clarion,
7 o'clock. And in the afternoon, I'm not going back to Jackie's place for a sleep. I'm actually going to do a workout and go for a run, if anyone asks.
And we'll believe that.
You'll have to believe it, because I'm going to be sleeping. So, thanks, guys.